Welcome to Gold Derby's reality nonfiction Emmy panel. I'm senior editor Marcus Dixon, and we are here with David Brindley, the producer of The Reluctant Traveler with Eugene Levy on Apple TV+. David, this show is entering the hosted nonfiction category at the Emmys, and it's one of the funniest shows currently on television, thanks in no small part to Mr. Eugene Levy. He's totally out of his element as he explores the world. How did you get him to do this project?
It's entirely down to Eugene Levy, actually, that it's that funny. But it's quite a good story about how we actually got Eugene to do the show. We were pitching and developing a different show or a similar show for Apple TV Plus, which was about beautiful hotels around the world that had extraordinary views. We, myself and the commissioner at Apple, Alison Kirkham, were both obsessed, like the rest of the world, with Schitt's Creek at the time that we were pitching the show. And we thought that Eugene would be the absolute perfect person to host the show. So we sent it to Eugene's agent, who politely declined it twice, and then we said just one more time, we'd really like to get on the phone with Eugene if it was at all possible, and so we did. Amazingly, Eugene jumped on the call. What we didn't know was Eugene thought he was jumping on the call to tell us yet again that it wasn't right for him, very politely, very kindly, just to come on camera and say he wasn't going to do the show. And then he told us the reason that he couldn't do the show, and that was because he really didn't like travel. He hated travel, and there was so much about travel that irked him and that annoyed him, and he wasn't well travelled at all. So as he was telling us all of this, myself and Alison were falling about laughing, really, on the other side of the Zoom call. And after we got off that call, and Eugene thought that he'd politely declined the show for the third time, both Alison and I said, that's the show. It's a show about somebody. It's a travel show about somebody who doesn't like to travel, and so we sort of redesigned the pitch. We made it very bespoke to Eugene, and we went back to Eugene and pitched him The Reluctant Traveler, and he really liked that and got that, and he understood the potential comedic value of it, but also that it was really authentic. It was genuinely how he felt about travel, and then we all felt, I think, the three of us, that we had something unique in a travel show, which is hard to find, because there are a lot of brilliant travel shows out there. But once we tailored it very specifically to Eugene, we felt like we could find a little gap in the market and have something that felt quite special.
I love how in the first episode, he basically opens the show by saying, I'm in the Arctic Circle, but I'm not a winter person. I don't ski. I don't skate. I don't even make snowballs. So how much did you enjoy putting Eugene in these wild locations just to see how he would react?
Well, one of the first Zooms that we had once we decided to do the show, and once Apple had commissioned the show, we had with Eugene, where we just asked him to talk about everything that he didn't particularly like about travel, and he went through a huge list of, he doesn't like the hot, he doesn't like the cold, doesn't like the wet, doesn't really like the desert, doesn't like Michelin star food particularly, doesn't have an adventurous palate, hasn't been to X and Y, and essentially on that call he had described everything that we needed in terms of thinking about the places that we would want to take him, and the encounters that he would have, that inadvertently, I suppose, he'd given us our entire structure for all of the episodes, because then we were able to sort of choose locations and countries that we gave him a very different experience. I think it's important to say, though, as well, that it's not a churlishness on behalf of Eugene, and neither is it the production sort of just kicking him in the back and making him do these things. He also, at the age of 75, could see that there might be a value in broadening his horizons a little more, and wanted to see what the world could offer him, and whether or not, it might open his mind a little. And so that's what I like about the tone of the show, I think, is that it's not us just forcing him to do loads of things that we know he will hate. It's actually him actively encountering some of those things and seeing whether or not he becomes a transformed man, by dint of doing some of those things.
The first episode is set in Finland, and that's also the one you're submitting to the Emmy Awards. What is it about the episode you're most satisfied with, just on a production level?
Well, it's sort of got a bit of everything, I think, which is why we really liked it. Like you very kindly said, I think it's a very funny episode. Eugene's, brilliantly comedic in those situations, but it also shows the range, I think, of the production team. There are sort of, the cinematography is particularly beautiful in that episode. I think, our cinematographers, Sam Hardy and Harvey Glenn, did an incredible job. Our series director, James Callum, sort of created sequences in that episode, which are just they completely and utterly transport you off your couch and make you feel either like you're there or that you desperately want to go there. Particularly, I think the husky setting scene, which is really beautiful. Equally, the music in that scene, which is by David Schweitzer, is really beautiful. And also, Eugene is incredibly game. And at the end of the episode, no big spoiler here, but he goes ice floating with one of the people that he meets in the hotel, and he's genuinely transported, I think, in the episode, and arrived not loving the cold, and left slightly warmed by everyone that he'd met in Finland, and I think it was a real moment, actually, particularly on the back of the husky sled. He came off and it was genuinely the most fun that he'd had for a long time, I think, certainly on vacation, and so it feels like I think a transformative episode. And also, it's just an episode, I think, that was incredibly hard to pull off in the time that we had. Our line producer, Lily Fitzpatrick, and her team did an incredible job. Just the logistics of getting that team, that crew, up into the Arctic Circle, and hopefully making it look relatively easy, is all down to them. So I think it provided real range, I think, and hopefully it's an enjoyable watch.
Mm-hmm. Besides Finland, you also traveled to Costa Rica, Venice, Utah, the Maldives, South Africa, Lisbon, and Tokyo throughout season 1. That's basically every nook and cranny of the entire world. How did you decide on those locations? And is there anywhere you wanted to go that maybe you couldn't for whatever reason?
Well, yeah, the big thing was COVID. So we were making this throughout the pandemic, which is not easy to make a global travel show when half the world is shut down, and more than that, actually. So there was a practical element to some of the places that we chose and that we could travel to. We were constantly battling countries closing and opening again, and so that was definitely part of the sort of decision making process. But more than that, editorially, we were very sort of keen that every single episode felt very distinct, almost had its own feel, had its own color palette, had its own tone. And so when you looked at those episodes, on the Apple platform, each tile hopefully tells a story and looks very distinct. Utah looks very orange, Costa Rica looks very green, Finland looks very white. And so hopefully it gives you real range. And we obviously wanted to spread ourselves as far across the globe as possible and give Eugene, the most varied experience that was possible, and hopefully, at a time when we weren't able to travel, as lay audience members, hopefully create a series that allowed some escapism for the audience and got you to the far-flung corners of the world, and hopefully also maybe inspired a few people, whether you're Eugene's age at 75 or whether you're 21, to think afresh about travel and what it can offer you.
Do you have a favorite memory from filming in any of the hotels? These are all completely off the grid, mind-blowing hotels. I loved the one in Africa that was like a train car, an abandoned train car up on a bridge.
Yeah, I mean, the South Africa episode was pretty extraordinary. That hotel, I think, it is one of the most unusual hotels, certainly that we featured, that I've ever seen, to be suspended above the African plains, where there are wildlife, walking beneath your train carriage. It was very real, and that was the other thing. We wanted to put Eugene in situations that weren't contrived. We wanted him to sleep in somewhere where in the middle of the night he would hear the sound of wildlife right beneath his window, and you sort of then can't avoid the the realities of the places that you're in, and we obviously we push that even further. So South Africa, for instance, you know, what I think in terms of the episodes and most memorable moments, you know, certainly for me, I think was when we got Eugene to join a veterinary team who were going out to dart an elephant to check on their health, and Eugene very gamely said that he'd help those vets do that, not his you know, natural role. And there was a moment when one of the vets suggested that the next sample that needed to be taken would be a fecal sample from the elephant. She produces a sort of foot-long glove and suggests that Eugene helps out. And it was a moment where we hadn't told Eugene that was going to happen, and he was completely and utterly shocked. You can see in the episode he says, "Oh, I don't think I can do this," and the bit you don't hear in the episode is that I'm behind camera and I say to him, I think you can actually, Eugene. And he very, very gallantly and gamely pops the glove on, gives the an elephant an internal inspection, one of which he'll never forget, and probably the elephant too, actually.
And the audience, I don't think I'll ever forget that either. Well, David, thank you so much for chatting with us. The Reluctant Traveler has been picked up for season 2. I can't wait to see where you travel to next.
Thanks so much. Great talking to you.